Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the second episode of Titans Lead. I'm Dan Luisi, the Director of Alumni here at Holy Trinity High School. We started the Titans Lead episodes last month, featuring some of our healthcare workers during the pandemic. On this month's episode, we will highlight two alumni who have been very successful in their field, talk a little bit about their time as a Titan, as well as their career journey, and ask some questions about how they've been integrating technology into their daily workday. So my vision for these engagement events is for our students to hear from alumni that are doing great work in their field, and for our alumni to provide valuable insight for our students who seek advice and guidance as they start forming their professional goals. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our panelists for today's episode, give a quick bio, and give them the opportunity to speak a little bit about themselves. So first, we have Chris Eldridge, class of 1990. Chris has had a very successful professional life in the IT field, most recently as CEO and president of DuPont Fabros Technology. Following high school, his academic and athletic accomplishments landed him a full scholarship to play basketball at Hofstra University. Following his undergrad, with his bachelor's in business administration, following his undergrad, he earned 2 master's degrees in business and arts. Chris currently resides in Virginia, but that has not stopped him from supporting Holy Trinity in the basketball program every year. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So if you want to talk briefly about your career journey and your experience at Holy Trinity.
Sure. I mean, you appreciate your experience at Holy Trinity a lot more when you graduate and you look back and you think about some of the things that you did when you were young. And Mr. Fennell knocking on a door and pulling you out of class. He was the dean of discipline when I was at Holy Trinity, and I'm not going to lie, it did happen to me a few times. And you realize in certain situations how immature you were. But the thing that I learned most about Holy Trinity is, there's consequences for the things that you do. And that's the thing that I love and the beauty about Catholic school education, right? If you don't do your work, there's a price to pay. If you don't go to a class, there's a price to play. And what that did for me is it built the foundation of my career and taught me discipline. It taught me time management. It taught me how to interact with others. It taught me how to treat people with respect. And it really helped me as a leader. And I was fortunate enough to benefit from going to St. Raphael's, which is a grammar school in East Meadow, which was a Catholic school that had a lot of folks that attended Holy Trinity, which it really all started. And, the Catholic values that I gained in grammar school and high school are something that are pretty dominant in my family today. So, all my kids are in Catholic school, and we really value, my wife and I, the Catholic education and the Catholic experience. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I always look forward to, being able to give back and contribute to Holy Trinity and anything that Holy Trinity does, because Holy Trinity is something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's a part of my life. And I look back and say, wow, I'm really proud to say that I went to Holy Trinity High School. And my kid is lucky enough, my son, Joe, Coach Conerfy, actually, he attends his camp and gives him some shirts. So he's probably the only kid in McLean, Virginia, sporting Holy Trinity basketball gear. And he's proud of it. He's got more Holy Trinity gear than he has from his current school. So, from a business standpoint of view, I always thought I was going to be a basketball coach or a basketball player professionally. And when you're a kid, you should dream, and you should dream big. I was, pretty successful in basketball in high school and had a decent college career. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. And when things don't turn out the way it is, there's certain things that you could do. You could either shut down or you could focus on other things. And I became a very, very good student when I got to college, a lot better of a student than I was in high school. And some of my teachers can attest to that. And I became focused. I was fortunate enough to play for great coaches, Dick Zeitler and even Don McKay, if you know Don McKay or Mr. McKay. Appreciate everything that the two of them taught me. And believe it or not, just because you're a high school coach doesn't mean you're not a better coach than some coaches that you see in college. They're tremendous coaches. They just make a decision that they want to help younger kids. So in college, I was fortunate enough to play for Butch Van Bredikoff and Jay Wright. But, I met Jay my last year at college. He took over when I was a senior, and I saw the way he operated, and I saw the things that he did, and it actually led me to believe that maybe college coaching wasn't for me. So I got my first job in an executive development program at Cablevision on the technology side. and I moved up very, very quickly. So I was the youngest director in the company at 26. And I was like, wow, this business thing is probably good for me. And you talk about a lot of the degrees. Do I love school? I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that I love sitting in a classroom on Saturdays and at night.
Mhm.
But I wanted to make sure that if I was in a situation and I was competing against someone, that I had those degrees that could put me in a role to be the CEO. So when I shift my focus from basketball, I 150% shifted my focus to being a CEO. And that's what I wanted to do. And that was my goal from the time I was 22 years old. And, as I said, when I took over at DuPont Fabros, when our stock was under pressure, when I first took over, sometimes you get what you wish for. And being a public company CEO, there's more pressure than hitting 2 free throws at the end of the game in any basketball game that I've ever played in, because there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the line with every word that you say. So I took over a business that was underperforming. Our stock was under pressure. There was activist investors that were looking at the stock when I first took over. I was the youngest CEO in the space, and took over at $16 share price. And 3.5 years later, we sold for $70 a share. We went from a market cap of 2.4 billion to 7.9 billion. We had the highest EBITDA margins in the space at 62%. And we also had the lowest SG&A of 4.2%. So for me, the one thing that I learned is if you put your mind to it and you really set goals for yourself, don't let anyone tell you can't do it, because you can. And I'm proof of it. I mean, I'm the one. If you ask Sister Johanna, who I love to death, who was my Spanish teacher, Mr. Fanning or Mr. Fennell, if you'd see Chris Eldridge ring the bell at the NYSE, they'd probably tell you, come on, are you kidding me? And it can happen. And if you have the right work ethic and if you put the time in, you can do anything that you want in your career. And there's people like me that are out there to help you. So if you have questions and you want to ask, please feel free. And now I sit on a couple boards. I'm on the board of an undersea fiber company called Seaborne Networks, which is undersea fiber from the US to Brazil. I'm also a board member and a comp committee lead on the largest Bitcoin manufacturer in North America. It's called HUD 8. So you also may see an announcement we'd be named CEO of a company in the next 2 months. So just be on the lookout. Can't disclose that, but Holy Trinity was a wonderful experience for me. And the biggest disappointment for me is moving to Virginia, because I always saw my son going to Holy Trinity and playing basketball for Coach Conerfee. And please don't tell Joe that I said that, but he's a wonderful coach and he does a great job. And I always saw Christopher with him, and I'm really sad about that. And I saw my daughters and going to Holy Trinity too as well, because for me it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful high school, and I'm very proud to say that I was a Titan.
That's great. Well, we miss you too. So, and the constant message that I'm always hearing from alumni, and you started off by saying it, you don't realize that sometimes as a kid the value and the impact that Holy Trinity has had on your life and the way you operate. And I think it's a lot to do with the structure, and having an expectation and responsibility to do things the right way, whether it be in sports, whether it be in the classroom, whether it be in your dress code. So no, it's great that you hit on that. And that's a message that I hear often from alumni. So thank you for that. So next I'm going to introduce Kevin Brown, class of 2007. And Kevin is an ESPN commentator and the Baltimore Orioles play-by-play broadcaster. Me being a baseball guy, I mean, I'm super excited to have you be a part of this. So following graduating from Holy Trinity, Kevin attended Syracuse University. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Public Communication and Broadcast Journalism. And he started his broadcasting journey as Director of Media Relations and Broadcasting for the Syracuse Chiefs, which is a AAA affiliate of the Nationals, I believe. He has worked alongside some of the best in the industry. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you for joining us. And like I said to you earlier, spring training's right around the corner, so you must be pretty excited right now.
I am. The sun is shining finally, which is a lovely thing. Thank you for having me, Dan, or I guess I should say Mr. Luisi. It's a pleasure to be here and to be the first alumni panelist on the Titans Lead videos that looks like he could still be in school. I did graduate. I promise I'm not like a sophomore. Like Chris, I'm also Yeah, well, like Chris, I'm also
I think Kevin's trying to say that I look a lot older
Bitcoin
than he does.
miner too, so we have very similar backgrounds. No, it's wonderful for me to be here and to talk about Holy Trinity. I am one of 25 grandchildren on my mom's side. My mom is one of 8, and of those 25 grandchildren, 16 of us went to Holy Trinity. The first of which, I believe, was Sean O'Hare way back when. And the last of which was Eddie Noble, who last year was the, I believe, salutatorian of the school. Yeah. So it's run in the family for me. It's personal for me. And the wonderful thing about Trinity growing up was, it was never something that had to be the school for us. It was not fated or destined. It was, a matter when we were all growing up, my brother and sister and my cousins and I, of us having the freedom to choose from the Catholic school we wanted. And there are some fine options on Long Island, but Trinity just fit. It fit for all of us. There was a wonderful sense of community there, and some of my closest friends still to this day went to Trinity. I met with and became friends with people from so many different walks of life, not just people who looked like me or sounded like me or were from the same town as me. And the well-rounded education I had there is what stands out. I work in sports, as you said, Dan. I'm on sports television and sports radio, and people see that and they think, well, you just must be a complete sports fanatic and sports is your whole life. And maybe for a while as a kid it was, but as I've grown in the profession, as I've grown in life, you realize there's so much more to it than that, which we can talk about. But being a well-rounded person on and off the air has been as valuable to me as knowing any rule of any game or any pronunciation of any coach or player. And from public speaking with Miss Martin to folklore with Mr. Corsi to some of the valuable science and math and history classes I took, having the well-rounded education and having the level of teaching that I did, and the well-rounded education in track and a well-rounded education in different clubs and at Spirit Night, that all helped to form me and help me grow just beyond a few specific narrow interests. So for me, that's what's mattered, is the sense of community and the sense of family and the sense of really versatility that I got from Trinity. And it's a delight for me to, even virtually be able to speak about some of this, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we can do it in person.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Great insight, just again, both of you guys on your experience here and just the impact that, this type of education, and really not so much the education, but the support system that Holy Trinity provided for you, which helped you grow into, the young adult at the time that you wanted to be. And you guys are doing great work. So, I'm really happy to have you on, and I look forward to digging into some of these questions. So we're crunched on time, so we're going to get right to some of these questions. The questions I've created kind of have a blend of, your experience here, a little bit about, your daily work day, and also about being, flexible to change. And as you know, now we've all been forced to change one way or another in, our in our careers. Hence, we're sitting here on a virtual platform talking instead of meeting face to face. So the first question that I have for you guys, and Kevin, you can answer this first. So how has your education prepared you to have success in your career?
Sure. It goes back to what I was saying about being well-rounded. I mean, my job is basically talking about sports, right? But it's about entertainment and education too. Like last night I was on a game with Dan Dockich, and we made a bunch of Seinfeld references because it was a player named Rochelle. And maybe there isn't a class for that at Holy Trinity, but sports is a vessel for a variety of different subjects. The game last night was at Tulsa, and I've done a few games at Tulsa this year. And this year is the 100th anniversary of what was known as the Black Wall Street Massacre in 1921. And we have photos and video of that area in Tulsa. And we spoke with Tulsa's head coach, as I've done before every game, about his team taking a unity walk and learning about what was an event that not a lot of people knew about, and how they plan to honor the victims of that attack and how they plan to honor other Black Americans who've died this year in solidarity with the 100th anniversary. None of that has to do with sports, but it's all important to the community, and it's part of the fabric of the University of Tulsa and Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we're calling a Tulsa game, and we're talking about Frank Haith, who was one of 5 Black head coaches in Tulsa history. And he's wearing a towel on his shoulder in homage to John Thompson, the great Georgetown coach who passed away last year. Like, all this stuff is at the forefront of the discussion. And the game is not just about who shoots and who scores and who passes. It's about more than that. We have the opportunity to tell stories and to dig into what makes these kids and these coaches and these players and these cities tick. So to have an awareness of history and have an understanding of the context, and be able to think beyond your comfort zone is so important. I mean, I can point to any specific subject at Trinity, right? Like math class. Okay, you work in sports. What do you need math for? You want to come up with a free throw percentage on the fly? That's as important as anything. English class. I mean, command of the English language. And Chris, you can certainly speak to this too in your job. Grammar, terms of speech, et cetera. We're not just broadcasters. We're all storytellers. And you learn that in public speaking. And I learned that in folklore and fantasy and science fiction with Mr. Corusy. And everything adds up. Everything forms a piece of the whole. You can't just be a sports guy in my job. You have to be more than that. Some of the most intelligent, well-rounded people I've ever met are sports broadcasters. They could be actors or stand-up comics or professors. And sometimes the least interesting part of my job is the actual sport of it. When you call a game, it's not just you. It's me and an analyst. It's me and another person. Maybe a sideline reporter's there. We deal with a producer and a director and a graphics operator that are in the truck and a whole bunch of different people. And why people like watching our games, I think, is not just because we call the game, it's because we have a conversation. And that means you have to adapt to the person who's next to you in the booth. And you have to fit your strengths to their strengths and draw the best out of them. It's an interview in some ways, and it's a conversation in another. And it's about being an active listener, and it's about finding their interests and about understanding what makes them tick. And having a worldly view and being knowledgeable in any number of different subjects is so important, because if you just come into this and say, okay, I know sports. Okay, I'm going to sit next to Dan Dockich and just talk about sports. People are much more than that. People contain multitudes. And I learned how to explore those multitudes at Trinity, and it still helps me every day.
Awesome answer. Chris?
So mine will be a little bit different. And it takes me back to my sophomore year of high school, and I'm sitting in Sister Johanna's Spanish class. And she calls on me, and I'm hiding behind the person in front of me because I don't want her to call me because my pronunciation of Spanish was not very good. And I still tell this story to this day. I hear Senior Eldridge, and I peek up, and I'm like, oh my God, please don't call me. Please don't call me. And, what she taught me is how to speak. And granted, it was Spanish, but to have the confidence to deliver a presentation in front of people. And a large portion of my job is public speaking, and it's relating to people. As a public company CEO, you do earnings calls, you do investor meetings, you do, I had to do an investor day presentation in front of 1,000 people in New York City. It was webcast to another 1,000. And if the presentation doesn't go well, there's consequences, which leads me to Sister Johanna's Spanish class. What I made sure that I did after she embarrassed me in front of the class, because I really, my Spanish was really bad. I started preparing, and I never let that happen again. That one moment where I was hiding and I got up and spoke in front of the class and I didn't do well, I made sure that it never happened again. And one of the things that people don't realize, and I'm sure you do this with your job, Kevin, it's the preparation that goes into whether it's a broadcast or the stuff that you do. And my kids will laugh. Like, I was taking them to a basketball game 3 years ago, and I'm talking to myself walking down the street because I'm rehearsing questions that are going to be asked to me on these calls, just to making sure I get it right. And the preparation piece, and I learned that early on in high school in 10th grade, is really, really important. And as an athlete too, preparation is really important. If you don't practice, if you don't take your shots, if you don't get in the batting cage and hit the baseballs, you know what I mean? You're not going to be successful. So the one thing that I can stress to all the students that I really learned is the preparation piece. And you learn that in Catholic school. And it's something that I use in my life today. I'm probably one of the most prepared people when it comes to any situation that I'm in, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a public speaking event, whether it's, someone coming in on a board call with the deck. I make sure that I read all the information before I get it. I have all my questions lined up. So I really learned that. And there's another thing that I learned at Holy Trinity too. Mr. Fanning, if you remember Mr. Fanning, he was one of my favorite teachers. I was told by a college basketball coach at UMass that I should take a computer class when I was in high school. And I'm old, so the internet wasn't there when I was in Holy Trinity. So, taking Mr. Fanning's class actually gave me a head start on computers when I got to college. And I took that in my senior year of high school instead of taking, food nutrition or something like that. I sat in a computer class. And then, the internet boom hits and, we talk about virtualization and a lot of the different things that we're doing. That's stuff that I learned at Holy Trinity. But, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that's kind of how I lead my life. And my kids lead their lives that way too. And I think it's really important. I think it's one of the reasons why I've been successful. And the other thing is too, that I learned, and I learned this through my coaches, I hate to lose more than I like to win. And that competitive nature that I have, and I learned that through, Mr. Zeitler and Mr. McKay when I was at Holy Trinity, which helped me earn a scholarship, which helped me make, first team All Island and All New York State and everything else. And, I had a pretty successful career. And without those people behind me, it wouldn't have happened. And, Holy Trinity was a school that I always aspired to go to because of Matt Doherty, who was a famous alum who went to my grammar school and high school. So all the kids in East Meadow who went to St. Raphael's always wanted to go to Holy Trinity. And, I was very happy. And Sister Johanna actually used to come to my games in college. Wow, so, the relationship that I built with her in high school, and I used to joke around with her, and I told her after, I'm like, I was afraid of you. She's like, you were afraid of me? I'm like, yeah, I was. You scared me. I was intimidated when I was in 10th grade, and I sat in your class, and you called on me. It wasn't that easy, but I said, thank you. And she was at one of our alumni games, and, that's something that you can't trade. And when you look back on that as an older person and as an adult, she really had a huge influence on my life.
Yeah. Now, you guys have both talked a little bit about your journey, your professional journey, and having goals and dream jobs, but you both have experienced a little bit of your goals changing along the way. So you guys talk about a little bit about that, about your personal experience, and maybe, a lot of the things you've learned in high school, maybe thinking you were going to be in this profession, have helped you be flexible to move into your current roles. So, Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I always thought I was either going to be a professional basketball coach or a player, right? But when you're a CEO and you're running a business, you're a coach. And those skills that you learn in athletics translate very, very well to the business world. And whenever I get in a competitive situation against anybody else, I look back onto the things that I did in high school athletically and in college, and I say, I got to beat this person. I have to win. And, these are things that I learned at a very, very young age. And whether it's getting 100 on a test, whether it's scoring 30 points in a basketball game and winning, the competitive streak has really helped me. And I was fortunate enough to work for a lot of good people throughout my career. And one of the things that you'll see is there's going to be great people that you could learn from when you're early on in your career, and you're going to have great mentors. And I've had some really great mentors that have actually helped me. And certain things that they've done, I haven't agreed with, but I've taken a piece of their style and incorporated into mine. So there's been three or four people that I've really, worked with throughout my career. There were things that they did that I liked, and there were things that they did that they didn't like. And I said, if I'm going to take the things that I like and I'm going to incorporate that into the way that I do things. So, and when you're in high school, I mean, you guys are young, you should have dreams. And dreaming is really important, and you should work as hard as you can to achieve those goals. But you always need a plan B and a plan C. And, when you run a business, you always need a plan B and a plan C because things change. Who would have thought we'd be doing this virtually right now? Yeah. 18 months from now, who would have thought that our kids, my kids, I have two that are still not in a classroom full time. Who would think that things like this would happen? So you need to be prepared for all of that. And, one of the things that I think that's really helped me along the way is that I had great teachers, whether it was in high school, whether it was in college, that taught me how to see things a little bit differently. And the last job that I had, at DFT, where I was the CEO before we sold the business, we went down a path that was different than everybody else in the space, in the data center space. And we decided to be 100% wholesale, which is selling to companies like Facebook, Google, and Amazon. So I have, executive level relationships at all those companies. And the street didn't think that was the best strategy. I thought it was the best strategy. And you know what? You look back now, and it was the best strategy. Everybody is trying to copy what we did. And, learning from these teachers and learning how to think out of the box and not being afraid to take a chance. Those are things that are really, really important. And you know what? Sometimes things change and life changes, and you just need to be prepared for it. But, I'm happy I went down the path that I did because, I think I've been a lot more successful in the business world than I would have been in the basketball world.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for that. And I'm very happily married. I'm a father of, 5 children. I have a great wife, and, life is good for us. So I'm very happy with the decisions that I've made.
Great. Thank you. Kevin?
Chris, I just want to say I would have very much enjoyed talking to you on one of my Zooms with basketball coaches, more so than some of the other coaches we get to talk to. So I'm sure you would have been a success in that world too.
Oh, I know a lot of those. I probably know a lot of those coaches. So is Tom Dockage from Indiana?
Dan Dockage. Yeah.
Dan. If you talk to him, tell him that you want to call Chris. I'm friends with his brother Tom.
Oh, wow. I might have a game with Dan next week, so I will tell him.
So I actually, Mr. Konchowski, I don't know if you know who Tom Konchowski is. He just recently passed away. I actually let Dan know that he passed away. He was the head scout for high school basketball in the Northeast, and he just passed away a week and a half ago. He's a wonderful man. He's on the first ballot. He's on the ballot this year for the Basketball Hall of Fame, and I pray to God that he gets in. I met him at Holy Trinity when I was 14, so
that's awesome.
Tremendous man. Thank you for that, though.
Of course. I will say, and I do want to touch on something that Chris said in the previous question. I didn't really have professional goals in high school necessarily. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved sports, and I said I want to do something in sports, but I didn't know what that was. I was a runner. And I didn't think there was necessarily a career for me as a professional runner, about which I've turned out to be correct. But I will point to a specific class, which is, I had this love of sports and this love of communication, and I started to become interested in what a broadcaster does. But even though we're on this call here and, I call games where millions of people occasionally watch, I just had this innate anxiety and fear when it came to public speaking. And Ms. Martin taught a public speaking elective senior year. So I figured, well, this is going to basically show me if I have the chops there. This is going to force me to confront that. And if I really want to do this, and if I want to have a career in the field of communication and in broadcasting, I have to be able to speak in front of people. It's literally as integral a skill as any. And thank God she had that elective. I took it. I really came to discover what I could do. Thankfully, there's not a video of me doing the James Earl Jones speech from Field of Dreams or the FDR. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself speech. But I did have a blast doing both of those in class. And I think it just unlocked a degree of confidence that I didn't have or that I didn't know I had. Because if you were to ask me about professional goals, I was just trying to have fun in high school and hang out with my friends and run. And that was the moment that really crystallized it for me, that this is maybe something I could do. That there was something that I didn't know that I had. And I tell kids in high school and college and people who want to understand, I don't know what I want to do yet. Try stuff. You're not going to know until you try stuff. Join a club, join a track team, take a different elective. You literally have no idea. If I didn't take that public speaking class, I would have gone to college and thought, I don't know if I can actually do this. I have no idea if I have that skill. You possess it if you go out and try it. And I do want to touch on the preparation that, Chris, you mentioned in the last answer, because that is so important. When I call a game, probably 10% of the work I put in, if that, shows up on the air. I have these big, dense sheets with 6 or 7 different colors on them in front of me, and nuts and bolts information about every player and career highs and season highs and personal highs and backgrounds and what this kid did in 7th grade and all this sort of stuff that almost never makes it into the broadcast. But some of it will inevitably, and you have to be ready for that. And I had to learn how to prepare at Trinity. You could not breeze through AP classes at Trinity, not close, no matter how much innate intelligence you have. You could not breeze through being an athlete. You know, like you, I was an athlete at school. I was a runner. I ran cross country, winter and spring track. And I was a pretty good runner for about 3 years. Just pretty good, like on that level between being one of the best in the league and just being another guy. And the summer going into my senior year, Mr. Muller is our track coach. And he basically convinced me, you know, you can have a big year, but you need to get serious about this. And so I ran almost every day, summer of senior year. I would run 8, 10, 12 miles on Sundays, and ended up by the end of the season coming in 4th in the entire city and Long Island championships, which like is still the best moment of my high school career. Grades, prom, spirit night, there was a lot of fun stuff. That race at Van Cortlandt Park was the best, and it was the result of preparation. And you know, I learned that you can't just be innately fast and finish in the top 5 in a race. The same way I've learned in this job that you can't just show up and call a game and hold a roster card and talk to the coaches once. No, you have to dig in and do hours and hours of prep for every hour you're on the air. And that I learned in classes, and that I learned from track at Trinity as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I just wanted to touch on that as well, because you don't realize it when you're 14 or 15 or 16. You just have no idea how much that level of preparation is going to matter, how much it gets baked into your mind, how much it lingers in your head. And that's as important as any lesson. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I just wanted to touch on that again.
I appreciate it. And I tell my kids, you can't do your homework on the bus.
No, it never works. We've both done it. We've been there.
Yeah, that's what I tell my kids. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, you can't do it. It's not going to work.
So the next question, we're actually going to switch gears a little bit and start talking a little bit about how your workday has changed, you know, and how you've started to utilize technology in a different way. You know, since tech's constantly changing and evolving, you know, the ongoing process and the demands of your work specifically, how are you taking advantage of the new technology while working remote, and how might the responsibilities change in your job moving forward?
From my perspective, I haven't been on an airplane in over a year. So I used to travel, and I used to travel a lot internationally. So the last trip I took was to Amsterdam last year. And now all those meetings that I used to do in person are actually happening on Zoom. And for me, from a professional experience, you know, flying to Amsterdam, that's a full day. You know, you go to a meeting for 4 hours, you leave the meeting, and then you fly back. It's another full day. So you lose 3 days with that trip. So I think the technology has made me a lot more effective and efficient. And the one thing that as a leader is important is trust. And I think as a CEO of a business, you have to trust your people, and you have to give people flexibility in today's workforce. So I'm a big fan. If your kid has a game, you should go. You shouldn't miss those moments. You shouldn't miss those experiences. I remember as an athlete, my mom and dad sitting in the stands watching me play in a basketball game, or watching my dad coach on my Little League baseball team. And I think parents should be able to do that. And as a leader, if you want to retain great people, you have to let them do that. And whether it's, you know, conference calls or phones, I think the one thing that I've learned through this whole pandemic is flexibility has become increasingly more important, because good people are going to work hard regardless, whether it's in an office or whether it's working remotely or whether it's being on a conference call when you're, you know, driving your kid to a practice. And I think all of us have done that. So I think those things are really, really important. But the Zoom thing has really taken off. And for me, it's been really, really effective, because, you know, I used to travel to New York City 4 times a year for board meetings. Now we do, you know, which I have after this, a 3 or 4 hour call on Zoom. And after I'm done, I'm able to spend the evening with my family. And I think others should have that opportunity too as well. So the great thing about technology throughout this thing, I think it's given, a lot of us more family time and more time to spend with family and friends. And to me, that's something that's very important to me.
Kevin?
Yeah, I also have not been on an airplane in almost a year, which I never would have thought possible. For football season, I'm flying every week. For basketball season, sometimes flying twice a week.
Yeah.
The last time I was on an airplane was mid-March last year, flying back from the American Conference men's basketball tournament the day after we had flown down, because that morning it had been canceled like everything else. So I did a baseball season last year with the Orioles where every game we did was out of Camden Yards. The home games, obviously, but the road games too. And we would sit in the booth and call the game off the monitor and do the best you can. I am in my apartment right now in Queens. Upstairs, nationally televised broadcasts air. One did last night, one will tonight. I have a laptop, a camera, a light, a giant monitor, an audio box, an Ethernet cord, and a bunch of other gizmos and gadgets from ESPN. There are folks who are on site at a game. So for tonight, we have Western Kentucky at Houston. So there's a crew that's on site at Houston. There are camera operators there. They beam a feed back to either ESPN's offices in Connecticut or in Charlotte or at the Wide World of Disney complex in Orlando. The producer and the director, the graphics operator, and some other folks will be there. They get the feed, they put it in a Zoom. We call into the Zoom, we connect our audio, we connect our camera, and we could do a nationally televised game from home. So I have been doing basketball games from my apartment, probably to the chagrin of my neighbors, for the last 3 months. The only games I've been at were local games in Connecticut I could drive to. All of our meetings with coaches and players, normally at shoot around, you just hang out with a coach, talk about the team the day of. Football, you get in the day beforehand, you have long meetings with coaches and players. All those have been over Zoom. So that technology is here. It's amazing. Most people who watch the game say, I have no idea that you're not there and that you're thousands of miles away. It's an incredible technological advance that our company threw together like that. So when you talk about adaptability, as you did, Chris, the folks at ESPN, like everybody else, did not see this coming. In February, it was a normal year coming up. And in March, everything was shut down. And in order to minimize travel, they had to do this on the fly. There are now probably about 150 of these. They're called live from home kits that have been sent out all across the country so we can do our job safely from home. Whenever this pandemic ends, I think we'll probably still do some of these from home because you've shipped 150 cases of laptops and monitors and cameras and lights and things out. I don't think the company's going to say, all right, just send them all back now and we'll put them all in storage. They're here. And the flexibility for us to be able to do our jobs from home is here. And I don't know if that's going to go away anytime soon. But it's been a seismic change. A year ago, I would have laughed if you said I could have ever done any of this. But the ability to adapt and to improvise has become the prevalent skill, I think, in all of our lives.
It's fascinating. And a follow-up question to that, and you kind of just hit on it, Kevin. You think this type of communication will be something that we're participating in long after the pandemic is over? Now, Chris.
Yeah,
Chris, Sure. Sorry. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I'll just say financially, I think it makes sense. We'd all love to be there. I can tell you, everybody who does my job, we'd love to be on site. You love to be around the people and have those intimate and personal relationships with coaches and players. But again, all this stuff is out here now. We all have the technology in our homes. It probably won't make sense from a business perspective for ESPN to say, well, for all of these games, some of which are on lower level networks and don't generate as much revenue, we're going to send folks out from New York to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because you already have the stuff, and it will save them the airfare, and it'll save them the hotel, and it'll save the per diem, and it'll save certain on-site costs. So yeah, I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I would echo that. From a technology standpoint of view, it gives you the ability to hire people all over the world, right? So you don't have to just limit yourself. I live in McLean in Northern Virginia right now. Just, our office was in DC and we had an office in Ashburn. I don't have to hire people just in this area. With this type of technology, I can hire people pretty much anywhere, right? So I think that's really important. And from an expense standpoint of view, when you look at the T&E budgets and travel budgets, I think it's a great way to save money and cut costs and to save time and to have employees become more efficient. The certain things that you will still need is the personal interaction with customers. And sometimes you have to have people go out and visit customers on the business side. But I think this technology is here to stay. And from my perspective, I'm actually grateful for it because it's definitely made me more efficient. It's given me more time. And, someone who is, a workaholic type, like I'm on 24/7 from the time I wake up at 5 a.m. till the time I go to bed. That's just the way I am. I'm wired. The first thing I look at is my phone. And I just work that way. So from my perspective, it gives me the ability to do some other things while using this technology. And I actually think it's going to be here for a long time, and it's not going away. I think we're going to start using it more and more. I actually have a board member that a friend who's on a board with me who bought stock in Zoom at 23 cents. So if you look at Zoom stock right now, it's well over $200. So it's not going away.
Yeah.
And
who is that friend?
Holy Trinity,
and can I meet him or her?
Yeah, I know you would like him. He's actually pretty good. I'd hate to tell the kids at Holy Trinity too that snow days may be going away too with Zoom.
Yeah, I think our kids have already experienced a little bit of that. So
yeah, my kids too. Yeah, with that, they're like, "Oh, online school. I thought we'd have the day off to sleigh ride." I'm like, "Nah, sorry."
So just to follow up, when Chris, you're talking about, I mean, you're hiring employees constantly. Whether it be in your past job or your future jobs.
Yep.
So what skills or characteristics for you would make someone an effective remote worker and something that you'd be looking for in a potential hire?
I'm not going to lie. I like athletes, ex-athletes, because the competitive spirit and the competitive nature that, folks have, that's something that's near and dear to me. And, I always look for that. I look for people that, are really good working groups and a part of a team. And one of the things with my style, I like people that like try to prove me wrong as a CEO, because I always tell people that if you hire smart people and you don't listen to them, they'll just leave, right? So you always want to hire people that are smarter than you because it really makes you look good. And you know what? Don't be afraid to give them the accolades when they do great things. You should never take credit for someone else's work. And that's one of the things that I think I've always done. And I learned that in basketball. Like, and Kevin, you interview a lot of people, right? Anybody who tells you that they won the game by themselves, it's ridiculous, right? Without the four other guys in a basketball game, or whether it's football with, the offensive line protecting the quarterback, it's all about the team. So I look for people that work well in teams. And I'm not going to lie, I do like the Catholic school background because there is something to it, as crazy, as it may sound. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you, about consequences like we talked about before. You're respectful. Both of us are still saying, I'm old now, and I'm still saying Mr. Zeitler and Mr. McKay and Mr. Fanning. And my kids do the same thing to this day. And I think that's something that's really important, to that respect and that hard work and drive. That's kind of what I look for in people. And, I'm a big fan of the best person should always get the job. And whether it's male, female, yellow, orange, green, you want the best people around you. And that's the most important thing that, I look for in people.
Kevin, any follow-up?
Yeah, I would just say this is pretty simple, but if you want to be a good remote worker, say yes and smile. I know that sounds really basic, but Chris, you've had experience as a CEO. You're the person in charge. You set the tone. And being a play-by-play broadcaster is not exactly the same, but when the game goes on the air, your voice is the first voice that's heard. A lot of people have a lot of different ideas for the broadcast. You are the one who gets to execute them. And right now, every game beforehand, something goes wrong because technology is great, but it's not perfect. It's me in New York and Dan in Indiana and a game in Oklahoma, right? Something's going to go wrong. I had to call a game this year where I literally couldn't hear my broadcast partner. So I called him on my phone, put in my headphones, and had my headphones under my other headphones so I could hear him on the air. And it would have been very easy for me to complain and to throw a fuss and make a stink about it and say, this stinks and I hate this and this is no way to work. That's not going to make anybody around you better. Take a deep breath, smile, be adaptable, because you set the tone in your job. And if you portray the right kind of energy, the people around you will be better. I've always found that to be the case. People naturally gravitate to positive energy, more so now than ever, because it is very, very easy to let negative energy get you down. Like, you have to be ready to improvise. You have to understand that things are going to go wrong no matter what you do. That's not your choice. The choice you can make is how you handle that and how you approach that. And that choice, consciously or not, I think it affects the way that people work around you. And I found that to be the case. I work with people that don't have that kind of attitude, and the whole broadcast suffers as a result. Even if it's the director or the graphics operator or a camera operator or somebody that you would never think of as the most important person, if one person has a bad attitude, it can sink the entire operation.
Great, thanks. And you know what? That's similar when Chris is talking a little bit about teamwork. It's true in every field. You're only as strong as the support and the people that you work with, right? Like, your success a lot of times can rely on the trust you have in other people, whether you're hiring somebody or whether you're working alongside somebody. So that was great insight. And lastly, I just kind of wanted to ask, just if you were able to shed one piece of advice to our current students that helped you reach your professional goals, what would that be? Kevin, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. One piece of advice. Be curious. You find things out when you're curious. Don't just ask the basic question. Go beyond that. You know, small talk can be pretty boring. We all have to deal with that now, especially when we log on to Zooms. But go beyond small talk. Be curious about the person you're talking to. Be curious about what makes them tick, what drives people, what motivates people. Like Chris, you were talking about, you love working with athletes and competitive people. They have a different kind of drive. And you find that out when you engage people beyond just who are you, what do you do. Like, I go back to what I said at the beginning. I became friends with all kinds of people at Trinity, not just people who looked like me. And I found out what made those people tick. And I learned about myself through learning about different people, not just, I grew up, obviously, I'm from Baldwin, New York. It's a fairly diverse town, as Long Island goes, but you grow up around a lot of white boys. That's what I was. And I became friends with people of different races, and men and women both at Trinity. And I was curious about what their backgrounds were like and what made them the kind of people they were. And it's okay to do that and go outside your comfort zone, like expand your mind, take a public speaking course if you don't think you're a good public speaker. Join a team, run track. If you don't think you can be a good runner, you don't think you can get in shape, go find out. I wish I had done theater. I wish I'd done improv at Trinity. Like, I still wish I had done more and been even more curious. Don't just focus exclusively on the thing you think you're going to be or the person you think you are in the moment. Ask questions, be curious, step outside your comfort zone. I promise you this kind of stuff will matter down the line. I promise you it will, because stepping outside my comfort zone, it has changed my life. And I promise to anybody who's listening, it will change yours. Whether that becomes the thing you are or the thing you do or not, like, go find out.
Awesome. Chris, any follow-up?
Yeah, I would say, being able to do things that others won't do. And, it's making sacrifices. And there's sacrifices that I made in my career to get ahead, whether it's commuting a long time, being away from the family, long trips, travel, working weekends. You have to put the work in. And it's like studying for a test. If you don't study, you're not going to get a good grade. And that's kind of the way I look at things from a business perspective. I worked very hard to get where I am, and, never let anyone tell you can't do it, because you can. I set a goal at 22 years old to be a CEO, and I was a CEO by 40. Right. And I wanted to be a CEO of a public company. It was a public company. And I was the youngest CEO in the space. I was the youngest director at Cablevision. I was in another company. I was the youngest vice president in the company. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, and just work as hard as you can, because people who work hard, good things will come. And there may be some setbacks in your career, but if you continue to work hard and focus, you will be successful. And the other thing I would say is education is very important. I touched upon it in the beginning. Get as much education as you can, because you never want to be in a situation where somebody has an MBA and you don't, or somebody has an engineering degree, or somebody has a CPA if you're an accountant major and you don't have your CPA. It's really important to get that, because you may be better, but unfortunately in certain situations, if somebody has that extra degree, they may get the job, and you don't want to lose that job. So don't be afraid to get more education. Education is so important. It's important to me, my wife, both of us have master's degrees. And, I think the more education you have, the better off you'll be in the future.
Great. Thank you for both of you for that little piece of advice. And I think every student that's going to hear this video should really take away, Kevin, when you're talking about be curious, expand your mind, grow as a person, and you grow through experiences. And sometimes those experiences are uncomfortable, but you learn from them. And being able to, as Chris, as you said, being able to make sacrifices and sacrifice maybe short-term, goals for long-term success, and it's awesome. So I know that all the people that view this, even our young alumni that will be sent this video, that's going to stick out. And I really hope that they make that a part of their thought process. So what we're going to do is we're going to close with a couple of hot seat questions, just a little bit of fun before we go. So here we go. So first, and I'll start with Kevin. Who's your favorite teacher when you were a student here?
My internet connection just got briefly unstable. I think you asked me a question, but I'm going to have to ask you to repeat it.
We're going into a couple of hot seat questions. First, I was going to ask you first. So
I really looked like I was ready for the hot seat, didn't I?
So favorite teacher. Yeah, you froze it up.
Yeah.
So
there were just so many. I had to freeze up. No, I'll name two. Mrs. Gomez, who scared the life out of me my first day, and then became one of the most wonderful people I've ever been around. And then Mr. Lemos. So I had Mr. Lemos back-to-back years in English class. He is the reason I am the grammar freak that I am, and I will thank him forever for that.
Chris?
Yeah, Sister Johanna is definitely one of mine. Mr. Fanning and Mr. Fennell. And Mr. Fennell was my English teacher freshman year before he became the Dean of Discipline and then the principal. And I'll tell you, he was tough, but he was a very good English teacher as well. So for me, it would be those three.
All right, Chris, favorite class?
Favorite class, Phys Ed with Mr. Miltenberg.
Awesome.
Yes. Milty.
Moreno and Miltenberg.
Holy Trinity.
Legends in Holy Trinity.
Yep. Kev?
I've named a couple of them already. I really took a liking to senior year with Mr. Corsi, folklore, fantasy, and science fiction. The Hobbit, maybe my favorite novel growing up. And also anybody who has a cardboard cutout of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover with the Beatles is a friend in my book. So shout out to Mr. Corsi.
That's great. First memory of Holy Trinity. Chris, go ahead.
The Bunko party my freshman year. I don't know if they still do that, but I that was one of very good memories for me as a freshman. I was afraid to talk to girls at that time.
That's awesome. Yeah, like many of us. So, Kev, go ahead.
I still am, and I'm married somehow. My first memory is before going to Trinity is going on my visit. I guess it would have been junior year of high school. I don't know if it was junior or not junior of high school, but seventh grade. I don't know if it was seventh or eighth grade. I remember the first time looking at schools, and I remember I had looked at Kallenberg and I looked at Chaminade, and thought, oh, okay, there are things to like about these places. I have friends who go here. I feel pretty comfortable. I just remember being in Trinity, and I remember being in an English classroom and listening to our tour guide. And I remember turning to my parents and saying, this feels like home. And I didn't need to say more. They didn't need to ask why. It just felt like home. I remember that feeling of comfort and of family before ever actually going to school there. So pre-Trinity, that's my first memory.
Last question. If you could go back to one moment in high school, what would it be?
Oh, this is very easy for me. This is very easy for me.
Take the lead here. Go ahead.
Sophomore year, Spirit Night. Apologies to Kelly Moore, my dear friend, if she watches this video. Spirit Night. I didn't participate in Spirit Night freshman year. I went. I thought this is the most fun, intense thing in the world. I got to do this next year. Signed up for Spirit Night as a sophomore. I was part of one of the races, the scooter relay. I don't know if you're familiar, Chris, with the time-honored scooter relay tradition of Spirit Night.
I don't. I mean, I think that was after me. So.
Okay. So there is still Spirit Night, right, Dan?
Yeah,
that is still a thing that happens. Okay.
I don't think they had Spirit Night when I was in high school. I don't recall. I don't remember it.
Oh, you would have known. You would have known.
Yeah. It's basically a class. It's battle of the grades, and
No, they didn't do that. They didn't do that when I was in high school.
Obstacle courses, relay races, and when you're getting down to the last couple of races or events, it gets pretty intense. I mean, classes are starting to have a little pride, and so it's pretty cool. So I can't wait to hear the end of this story, Kev.
Yeah, it's more stressful than any college gym I've ever been in, calling a basketball game or any college football game or anything. That the Trinity gym packed on Spirit Night is like the sweatiest thing in the world. So scooter relay, you're paired with a partner. It's a boy and a girl together. You have the little flat scooter, just like a little, basically a piece of plastic with 4 wheels under it. Somebody sits down, the other person picks them up by the legs, and you run backwards across the length of the gym while holding the person on the scooter. You get to the end, then you sit on the scooter, and then they pick up you by the legs and they run backwards across the length of the gym. So Kelly Moore was my partner. We had the rehearsal the night before. It goes well, very smooth. On Spirit Night itself, we're up. Kelly's on the scooter. I start running backwards about halfway across the length of the gym. I fall down. Actually, not halfway across the length. It was about 90% of the way across because we were very close to the finish line. Because I fell down, got back up, and just dragged Kelly across the line. Okay, embarrassing moment, but no big deal. I get on the scooter. She runs backwards. She pulls me across the length of the course. No big deal. Next couple of groups go. We win. The sophomore class wins the scooter relay. It's a big deal. The seniors almost always win Spirit Night. As we are celebrating, as the sophomores are going crazy in the bleachers, 2 of the teachers who shall remain nameless come up to me and they say, "Oh, you guys are disqualified. You have to hold on to the person with both hands." Like where this is in the Spirit Night rule book, I still don't know. You got to show me the article. But okay, we're disqualified, so we don't get a point for coming in fourth. We get 0 points. When you're DQ'd, you get 0. Okay, kind of embarrassing that we got 0 because I tripped and I yanked her across in some made-up rule. But no big deal, it's fine. We're not going to win anyway. We're the sophomores. We never win. The night proceeds. The sophomores start to excel in some more categories. We win the last couple of things. It's time to announce the winners. 4th place, the freshmen. 3rd place, the juniors. And I'll never forget the announcement was the winner of Spirit Night by 1 point. And as by 1 point is announced, the entire sophomore class turns their head at me as if to say, "You jerk. This better not be on you." By 1 point, the seniors. So if we had literally come in 4th place, if we had gotten any points, we would have upset the seniors and won Spirit Night. I cried my eyes out for the next 24 hours. I felt like a pariah at school the next week. But the happy ending to this story is we did win Spirit Night junior and senior years. I made sure to tell Mrs. Gomez, "I'm on the scooter relay. You have to pair me with Kelly. I have to atone for my mistakes because I am an insanely competitive person." I got up. I started pumping up the crowd when it was our turn to go junior year. Kelly looked at me like I had 6 heads. I'm like, "We'll be fine. We got this." And we won the scooter relay junior and senior year. So it has a happy ending.
A little bit
But
of
I am still
perseverance.
scarred. I am still scarred by that stupid rule, the one hand pull across the line and our disqualification, which cost us the title. Not bitter about it all these years later.
I'm going to do some backup research and try to secretly find out who those teachers were.
Please do.
And tell them that the impact their decision has had on your memories. That's awesome. Chris, go ahead.
Mine's probably not as exciting as Kevin, because we
I
didn't have
hope
spirit
not,
night.
for your sake.
We would have spirit night, but mine would be more to some of the teachers I had. Like, I wish I could go back and really say thank you, because you don't realize the impact that a lot of these folks had on your life, and again, until you're older, and to apologize. Because I wasn't always, the best student and the most respectful student and the greatest person when I was in high school. And you learn that when you look back about how actually immature you were at certain times throughout your high school experience. And you realize as an adult that these teachers are really there to help you and to mold you and to show you the right way to do things. Whether it's getting yelled at for my tie being at half mast, which I used to wear a sweater and I'd always keep it down here, and I used to get yelled at all the time for that. But when I go into business meetings, it taught me how to my top button up and everything else. I mean, certain things, when you put a suit on and you wear a jacket, you learn things like that in school. And you could talk to Mr. Fennell. I had an infamous doctor's note where I was able to wear sneakers to school instead of shoes. And one of the janitors complained about me scuffing the floors with my running sneakers. And Mr. Fennell said I had to get black sneakers. And I bought the ugliest pair of black sneakers that I would never wear ever in my life, as a point of contention to be a rebel. And just to apologize for things like that, that's kind of the way I look at it, because I'm very thankful for the experience I had at Holy Trinity. I'm happy that I went to Holy Trinity. A lot of kids from my grammar school went to other schools. A lot went to Holy Trinity as well. But it's something that, has really helped me throughout my life, and talk about Coach, Mr. Zeitler and Mr. McKay. I met Mr. McKay and Mr. Zeitler before I started at Trinity, when I was in, 7th and 8th grade. And, they talked about potentially me coming to Trinity and everything else. And it was just, again, it was a wonderful experience. And I'm proud to tell people that I played basketball at Holy Trinity. I went to Holy Trinity. I grew up in East Meadow. You referenced Baldwin. Very proud of East Meadow. And Matt's writing a book, and it talks about Prospect Park. I grew up right around the block from Prospect Park, and just some of the great memories that I had throughout high school. It's hard to pick one, but again, just if I could say thank you, and I'm sorry for not always being as mature as I should have been throughout my high school career.
That's awesome. Similar to you guys, I'm an alum from here, graduated 2005, and we've all experienced how valuable this education has been to us and how it's helped us grow into the people that we are. And having that foundation that Holy Trinity instilled in all of us, we realize now how special it was. And we may not have always been the most mature, but I tell you, it's you carry a lot of the things you've learned here with you for the rest of your life.
Just one thing, if I could add too, is and thank your parents, because I didn't come from a lot, and my parents made sacrifices to pay the tuition and send me to Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are making sacrifices for this type of education. Thank your parents, and you should really appreciate it, because they're doing things to put you in a great situation to be successful in life.
Yeah. Kevin said, what, 16 is it, Kevin?
Yeah.
Is it 16
one of
members?
16 grandchildren. Yep.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wait, you're class of 05, so you guys beat us that year when I blew Spirit Night. Thanks for not rubbing it in.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I kept that. I saw how upset you were with the ruling and the teacher, so I kept that out. That's a wrap for us, man. I really want to thank you guys for cutting some time out and talking a little bit about your career and your journey, and offering all the valuable advice that you have over the last hour. The insight is going to be so valuable for our kids as they review a lot of this stuff. So I can't thank you guys enough. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I can tell, you guys still have Holy Trinity very close to your heart, and you're still always wearing the green and white. So
I got the green on today for it.
All right, there it is. So I just, again, thank you. Go Titans, and once a Titan, always a Titan. Thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks
Take
for having
care,
us, Dan.
guys. Talk
Thanks.
soon.